if you look at the research, it's not that cut and dry. There are studies that show 3 days of altitude was better than 1 day of altitude. And then there's studies that show the opposite.
So today we're switching things up just a little bit. So we are recording this, it's January 29th, but call it end of January. And everyone by now that is going to race Leadville this year should already know whether they're going to race Leadville, unless there's like special exceptions with special entries later. But the lottery just happened 2 weeks ago. So everyone that's doing Leadville should already be ready and starting to prep for Leadville. So we figured what better time to do a little preview to Leadville preparation than right now. We actually got a bunch of questions in from a listener and I think Ignition athlete who also just got into Leadville. Congrats. So we've got 12 questions on tap here across 5 different categories. And I want to do this kind of rapid fire style. So let's go through these pretty quick. And if there's any follow-up questions that people have specific to Leadville, we can always slot those into a question in a normal episode at a later time. But let's just keep this all Leadville. So kicking us off, first topic is training and fitness, foundation training. What specific fitness markers tell us that I'm truly ready for Leadville, not just quote unquote fit? So how does someone know if they're actually ready for Leadville?
Yeah, well, I think, so maybe the tricky thing is that a lot of people use, say, like a fresh 20-minute test to determine how fit they are. And it's not like that information tells you nothing in regards to your Leadville fitness, but it tells you a lot less in regards to your Leadville fitness than it would for a lot of other types of racing that may be shorter or potentially like not a steady, sub-threshold effort all day kind of thing that Leadville inevitably ends up being. And then if you throw altitude into the mix, like you're getting pretty far away from a 20-minute test when you talk about your Leadville effort. So I wouldn't necessarily rely on that and say, my 20-minute power is good, so I'm fit and I'm ready. You could hypothetically...
No, your 20-minute power would not tell you if you're ready for a 100-mile mountain bike ride, let alone a 100-mile mountain bike ride at altitude.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. I think that things that probably matter more would be your, like the power at which you can the power that you can sustain when you're at zone 2. So if you've got your zone 2 heart rate set, if you have an idea of what your zone 2 heart rate is, as you get fitter, you can usually see the power that you can sustain that heart rate at go up and up and up. So let's say you try to hold 135 to 145 beats per minute when you're on a zone 2 ride, just as an example. Everybody's different, but just as an example, if at first, you can only sustain 180 watts before your heart rate starts to drift towards the latter part of a 5-hour ride, then okay, you've got some indication there. But as you get more and more fit, maybe that goes to 190 and 200 and 210. That probably, honestly, even though that's at a much lower intensity and an intensity that you don't really think about racing at, that's probably a better indication of whether or not you're fit for an effort like Leadville than, I don't know, a 5-minute test, a 20-minute test.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's easy to get caught up in FTP numbers and wanting to just see that 20-minute power test increase, but I think we're all unanimously agreeing that's only going to take you so far, and it's probably only going to take you up St. Kevin's, because after that you're not, so I think, I'm in a total agreement. So I think we're going to get a little bit more in depth with these next 2 questions here. So let's move to the next one. What power durations matter most for this race as far as targeting in, specific training? So he gives, for example, like 30 to 90 minute, 2 to 4 hours.
Yeah. Well, so unlike other 100-mile mountain bike races, a 100-mile mountain bike race that has punchy climbs at sea level, you will be going above threshold quite a bit in that race, even though it's a long race and it might take you 7, 8, 9 hours. Even though you're taking that long to complete this race, if it's a punchy sea level mountain bike race, you will be going above threshold a lot. I would argue that a perfectly paced Leadville, you don't go above threshold once. Now, people will go above threshold at Leadville. Don't get me wrong, they do that. I would argue that that's not the correct way to pace a Leadville. Like, if you're pacing Leadville correctly, you don't go above your threshold one single time. And that's partially due to the fact that you have to contend with the altitude, so pacing becomes even more important than it is at sea level. And also, the climbs are long enough and steady enough that you don't necessarily need to like spike your power really high to get over them. You just need to put in a consistent power output to get over them. I think I'm straying away from the original question. What was the original question?
Well, and on top of that, the trails, if you will, are wide enough that almost always, with the exception of maybe the very early on St. Kevin's when it's still super chaotic and tight and people are, banging bars next to each other and there's only two real lines, and then towards the top of Columbine when you've got two-way traffic and gets a lot more challenging to pass on the on the inside because you've got people bombing down the hill straight towards you. Other than that, like there's no excuse ever to use super threshold effort to get around someone. If you need to get around someone, you should still be able to do that at a sub-threshold pace. Otherwise, you probably just don't need to get around them. So there's very few times where you would necessitate going over threshold. And maybe the only time that I would say it's even worth it is if you have to do so in order to avoid walking. There's like times at the top of Columbine, there's times at the bottom of Powerline where if you get caught behind someone who dabs, or comes to a total stop and you can't get around them and you have to come to a complete stop, you're not going to be able to get back on your bike. Whereas if you could have kept your momentum going, maybe you could have stayed on the bike and pedaled fine. So if you have to use that because you just need to get around someone quickly, that's about the only excuse I can see for going over threshold.
Yeah.
And I think the cool thing with Leadville is pretty much exactly how long each climb is going to take. 20 minutes give or take up St. Kevin's, 30 minutes give or take up Sugarloaf, an hour and a half, call it, give or take, maybe a lot more for some people, up Columbine, and then kind of flip that script coming back in. So you kind of know what your power targets need to be because those are the main parts of the course. Everywhere else, like, you're just doing pretty steady pace and you don't really need to focus your power duration curve on those efforts. It's really just those 5 main climbs. So it's gonna be anywhere from 20 minutes to, for some people, it could be 2.5 hours to get up, Columbine, in which case you're probably not really training specifically for your power duration curve for a 2.5 hour climb. You kind of know what to expect, which is also kind of cool about Leadville.
Yeah, I would say that during Leadville, you're kind of bouncing around between zone 2 and tempo. Tempo on the climb, zone 2 on the flats. And so as far as the duration goes, when we're talking about these lower intensities, duration kind of becomes less relevant because you're never gonna. So for example, if you're doing tempo intervals, you're never gonna train to a duration that maxes you out. You could do that, but that's not recommended because, theoretically you could hold tempo for hours on end, and you're not going to do that in training because that's absolutely going to wipe you out in one session, which you generally want to avoid. So it's not like let's say you're training for cross or something and you really want your 30-second power to be higher, so you train that specifically, and like that duration really matters. Or you're doing a race that has a 5-minute climb and your 5-minute power really matters. It's I wouldn't necessarily think about it in durations as much as just really trying to raise your power at zone 2 and zone 3.
Yeah, I don't think your 30-minute power matters. I mean, it would matter more so at sea level because there's a higher likelihood of you being able to have that 30-minute power and repeat that after 2,000 kJs. The altitude adds a whole nother element. Like, that effort is going to be so different. So it's more about your durability. I think it's more about how comfortable are you in, I don't know, is he going for a sub 9, the belt buckle? Like, how do you feel after 6 hours on the bike? Is your perceived exertion, relatively similar to the starting effort of the race? I don't know. I think you guys are being super nonchalant about Leadville, but it's like, how do you know that you're ready for it? I don't think you do unless you've ridden for, like, put in effort at that altitude.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've coached dozens of Leadville athletes at this point, and I've got close to another dozen this year. And it is very, very hard to predict finish times at Leadville. Even though, like, I've seen all the numbers, I've done the race plenty of times, like, it's still hard. And I'm talking about for people that haven't done it before, so that we just have, like, kind of no idea how they're going to perform. It's very hard to predict what your race day goal is, should be and is realistic, because it's just such a different animal once you get to 10,000 feet. So I totally agree, Caitlin. That's part of why I recommend people, if they have the chance, try to do an altitude race before this, whether it's the Silver Rush 50 in Leadville where you can get firsthand exposure, or another higher altitude race. But until you've raced at that altitude, you just really have no idea. People that think they're good at altitude and say, they go to Colorado and, they ride in Boulder and have no problem, they're going to get chewed up at 10,000 feet. There's just no way around it. Everyone does.
And I'm coming to you live from 9,000 feet right now, and I live at 7. And after a few nights in, I feel like my brain is just a bit foggier. And
sure.
I mean, it's no joke. It just wears you down.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle is your stomach going to be able to handle the nutrition that you're used to.
Yeah, we got a whole nutrition category later on. Yeah. Okay, let's do this next one.
Drew, are you in your bibs? You have time to go change,
Nah, you guys needed me, so I straight off the bike. I'm here.
All right, well, good thing this is rapid fire.
Yeah.
All right. What should my peak weekly volume be, and when exactly should I taper? So let's just go with the standard 9 hour, like sub 9 goal time athlete here. Someone who's like, their big goal is to break 9 hours. I think that helps kind of split the difference. You'll have some people that are faster than that, some people that are, a little slower than that, trying to just finish the race. But let's assume 9 hour finisher here. What would you recommend someone's kind of peak weekly volume? And don't say they should do a volume block week. Like, let's not do that. Let's assume it's like a sustainable weekly volume.
Well, I think it's going to be completely dependent upon their training history and what they're how much training they're used to doing. So it's a hard question to answer. And I think that the way that you know what is too much and what is too little is you're hitting too much volume when you can't complete your intensity sessions in the week because you're so exhausted from the amount of volume. And that can mean different things at different points in the year. So,
right.
In your base season, the intensity that you're doing is a little less important. So you don't need to necessarily be as fresh for it. And you're probably doing less intensity sessions anyway. You might be doing 1 intensity session a week instead of 2. So you don't necessarily need to be as fresh in the base season. But if you get into the build, like the last 2 months leading into the race or the last 3 months leading into the race, you're trying to do 2 intensity sessions a week. In this particular case, that would probably include a lot of tempo sessions because that's what you're going to be doing at Leadville, but also a little bit of general intensity. If you can't even make it through these sessions because you're doing so much volume in your week and you're not recovered, then that is a sign that the volume is too high and you need to back it down. And that's going to be different for everybody. At some people, that is going to happen at 20 hours, and in some people, that's going to happen at 10 hours.
Okay, well, give us a real answer here. Do you think somebody can do a 9-hour Leadville having done less than 10-hour weeks. I don't think so. I'd be shocked.
I would go back to Dylan's
there's all kinds
training
of crazy
history.
people in this world. I mean, if I bet you Keegan could do a sub 7-hour Leadville on
7
like
hours,
2
easy.
hours a week.
Okay, someone's
Yeah,
first
yeah.
time doing Leadville.
Sure.
If it's your first time doing Leadville and you've been riding a bike and doing structured training for less than 5 years, no way. Unless you're an abnormally adapted human to training stimulus and racing at altitude and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think if you're still new to the sport and you don't have a big aerobic base under you, I don't think sub 9 hours is super realistic at that volume. It's harder than people imagine. Everyone sees the big belt buckle and wants to target that, but I promise you, going sub 9 hours is actually harder than you think it is.
I think any rider, new or seasoned rider, should ask themselves, are you to figure out if they're prepared to do Leadville, are you prepared to do the hardest race you've ever done? Go in with that expectation and know that it could be better than you expected, but there are a lot of things that can make your day really, really hard there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I think it's probably not a bad thing I think it's probably not a bad thing for your very first Leadville to not have an expectation of a big belt buckle or any belt buckle. Just try to finish the thing as fast as you can, and then you have a data point for the future.
Yeah, I agree.
You guys are just convincing me to not do it even more. Caitlin just said expect to have the hardest race ever.
The hardest things you do are the most rewarding. You know that. You love that stuff. You eat that up.
She just hit me with some psychology. All right. I like
And when
it.
you see those views at the top, I haven't done it, but
The views.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I have not done Unbound. I think Unbound would still be harder than Leadville, but you know.
Dylan's done both. He's done well at both. What do you think, Dylan?
You guys
frozen?
asked me a
What
question.
happened?
Sorry, my internet cut out.
Yeah.
You guys asked-
yes.
Yeah, which one's harder, Leadville or Unbound?
Okay, my internet cut out.
Gosh. This is terrible.
Are you serious?
My
Which
internet
one's
is
harder,
like,
Leadville or Unbound?
I mean, they're different. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to say. Unbound takes longer. It probably also depends on a little bit on your physiology. Like there are people that are very natural, they're naturals at riding at altitude. Like, I guess just like all of cycling, there are people who adapt to altitude quicker and slower just simply due to their genetics. And there's not a single thing you can do about it. What you'll find with this Leadville pursuit is you'll probably find out whether you adapt well or don't adapt well to altitude, and that is a massive part of doing well at Leadville. And if you're a person that doesn't adapt well to altitude, then probably Leadville is harder. But if you do adapt well, then maybe it's easier. It's hard to say. I mean, they're so different.
Okay. Well, this is turning not into rapid fire, but let's see what. We might have to break this up into a few podcasts here.
No, let's rapid fire.
Let's move on to.
Yeah, this is the Leadville episode. Let's just, we gotta get it all in here.
Drew wants to talk about his Leadville as little as possible.
When
No, I want there to be a dedicated episode where when people ask us questions about Leadville, we can just say, episode whatever number this is.
we were planning on making this kind of the rapid fire episode. So just kind of giving people a sneak peek, and then if they have more specific questions on any of these topics, they can write in like a longer form question. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Okay, let's move into altitude. When should I arrive in Colorado, and where should I sleep to maximize performance? This one's easy.
All right, you want to hit us
But
with
I
it?
feel like you're going to say the opposite of me.
The day before.
As late as possible is option. I would say that's option 2. Okay, but it's probably most people's option 1. Because most people are not going to be able to do option 1, which I'll talk to next. So arrive as late as possible. The expo ends at 5 p.m. That's your last time that you can check in on Friday night. Get there at 4:30 p.m. look at traffic, make sure you can get there with a little bit of buffer, but get to Leadville as late as possible on Friday. Spend as much time below 10,000 feet as you can before race day. I don't think you need to like sleep in the front range, as in like Golden or down the hill anywhere that's like kind of close, as close as you can get, but down at 5,000 feet. I think if you stay close-ish, Upper Mountains usually 9,000 feet. Frisco is gonna be 8,000 feet. Like if you can't stay in Leadville and you have to go down a little bit, that's fine. But spend as little time as you can at altitude, especially Leadville altitude. That's probably going to be most people's best option. If you have the time and you want to get there early, you got to get there the weekend before. I think anywhere in between, getting there Monday through Thursday, I don't think it's going to be beneficial for your performance. So if you can't get there like the weekend before, I think last minute's the best.
So this is what I
thought you needed even more than that. I kind of thought if you can't get there 2 weeks before, don't even try.
Yeah. If you want to be like truly,
okay, well, that's just out of the cards for people.
If you want to be like truly adapted to altitude, 2 or 3 weeks is probably what you need. But this is what I was. Well, here. Let me finish my thought here. So I've done a whole video about altitude acclimation, and the research is actually really mixed. Like I don't think there's a clear consensus here. Like a lot of people throw out this rule: you either want to arrive the night before or you want it to be 2 weeks, nothing in the middle. If you look at the research, it's not that cut and dry. Like there are studies that show 3 days of altitude was better than 1 day of altitude. And then there's studies that show the opposite. I think part of the reason why it's not so cut and dry is because genetically we all adapt to altitude differently. There are people that adapt very quickly and very well to altitude, and they can probably get away with arriving 3 days before, which would be catastrophic to somebody else. There's people that adapt very quickly and very well to altitude, and there's people that don't. And the people that don't are probably going to have to be more careful about what their strategy is. Like, going with what Adam's saying. The people that do adapt very quickly and very well can, probably be a little more lenient with when they show up to Leadville.
Yeah, I agree. I just think if you don't know that already, you have to assume the worst, which the worst would be you're not good at adapting altitude, and if you get there 3 or 4 days earliest or before the race, you are going to be at your absolute worst on race day, and that's like no one wants that.
Yeah.
So the best thing would be to experiment. If you can, go do a race at altitude, Silver Rush or something similar that has to be at pretty high altitude. I'm talking above 8,000 feet of elevation. If you can do that as a preparatory race, that's great. That gives you a chance to experiment. What I would say for people, if you're going to do that and know that it's risky, get there 3 or 4 days before. Get there in that, kind of like ideal travel time window where, you're anywhere from 2 to 4 days before the race and see what happens. Maybe you're good. Maybe you're completely horrible, but at least you learned something. If your race goes completely horrible after being there for 4 days, now you've got 2 options. You either got to get there well in advance or last minute. But if you do pretty good, then yeah, like Dylan said, maybe you're one of those people that, kind of adapts well to altitude or at least doesn't feel the effects as much, in which case you can get there in the middle of the week and that's fine. But you need to know that ahead of time. Most people don't know that ahead of time and they get there on Wednesday or Tuesday because they think, if I get there a few days early, it's going to be better. And most people are not good at adapting to altitude. And by day 4, they are at their worst.
Yeah. And just
you can just order you can just order an at-home acclimation altitude testing kit and just test your altitude acclimation right in the comfort of your living room.
What is that?
I just made that up, but that'd be convenient if it did exist.
That would be convenient. I didn't think that was a thing.
And if you're really nervous and you don't want your first time to be a race, no matter what it is, whether it's Silver Rush or Leadville, you come to the Ignition Crested Butte High Altitude Training Camp that Adam and I put on.
For
what
sure.
are you doing, Adam? You're missing the...
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It does not have to be a race. That's a good point. I like the idea of doing it as a race because race day brings nerves and excitement and, sometimes upset stomach and all the different things that come with racing, but it does not have to be a race. If you cannot get to a race, but you can go up to altitude, that's also a great option.
If you're within driving distance of the race, I would say camp at Twin Lakes. Like, I think there's some other dispersed camping there, but it's really nice. It's really good. If you're coming with another person and they can drop you off at the start, and then there's time where they can get back up to their camp spot and support you at Twin Lakes. So that would be my option.
Cool. I like that. Okay. How much should we reduce power targets at altitude, and how do we adjust pacing zones?
All right, so this is a perfect time to look up a...
And this will be my last question, by the way, because I will have to bow out here. But you guys can keep going.
Okay. Well, you're the one who has the questions, unless you sent it to us.
No, I got
Dude,
them.
everyone has the questions. They're in the text message.
I'll take over the reading responsibilities since I don't have much of the answering capabilities.
Okay, so... You can find how much aerobic power drops at altitude pretty easily. In fact, you really only need to do a quick Google search. I'm going to do it right now so that I know that it comes up. Aerobic power.
So there are
at altitude.
There's like there's power reduction charts that you can find basically, and it'll give you a X factor to reduce your FTP by, and you basically just reduce your FTP by whatever that X factor percentage is, and then your zones will get adjusted accordingly.
Yep.
And I've used this with many athletes, and it works very well. And you can do it based on what your sea level FTP is, or if you live at 4,000 feet, you can start there, and then relative FTP at 10,000 feet. I would err on everyone wants to think that their FTP on race day is as high as possible. So they look at Leadville, they say, okay, Leadville's at 10,000 feet, so I'm going to reduce it by whatever, 22%. No, because you hardly are ever racing at 10,000 feet. You're racing mostly at 11,000 feet and 12,000 feet. So go up to, 12,000 feet and see what your power reduction is and err on the safe side. And if you feel great and you're having a good day, maybe you can bump that up a little bit, but most people, they under adjust and then override their race, which is also problematic.
Yeah. The one that I really like to use is on...
Do that at sea level races.
The one that I really like to use is on Joe Friel's website. So if you look up altitude power Joe Friel, it'll come up. It's the first one. It's got it's got the elevation, and how much percentage drop you can expect. And then what's nice is it has acclimatized and non-acclimatized. So if you know that you're going there already acclimatized, you can use that. And if you know you're going there not acclimatized, you can use that. I would say don't use the acclimatized one unless you've been there for over 2 weeks. Otherwise, use the non-acclimatized
Agreed.
one.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. And
such a big misconception that people think that once you're acclimatized, you're going to be able to do the same power that you can do at sea level. There's still a big reduction.
That's what I was going to say. It is eye-opening when you look at that chart and you compare the acclimatized versus the unacclimatized and realize that it's only, 2 or 3% that you're gaining by by truly acclimating. And I've used this chart myself personally and with some athletes. I think the last time I did Leadville, what does it say going from sea level to 10 or 11,000 feet? It's like 22 or 23%, right? Or 78% of FTP, something like that.
You're available. So this will just give you an idea of what acclimation actually does. It's actually not that big a difference for most people. Your available aerobic power at 11,000 feet, if you are non-acclimatized, is 77%. And then if you are acclimatized, it's 80.9%. So we're talking about like 3 to 4% improvement from camping out there for 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. So I used that exact number last time, the 77%. And after factoring my FTP and then looking at my normalized power after the race, my intensity factor for the 7.5 hours was 0.83 or 0.84, something like that, which is like pretty spot on of what you'd expect for that duration of a race. So it'll get you within a couple percent, which is going to be close enough. All right, I got to tap out, guys. Keep things going. Drew, you've got the questions.
Yeah, I'm on it.
All right.
Thanks, bud. See ya.
Yep, we'll see ya.
All right. I hope you guys even understand. I don't even understand this question. How will we detect altitude maladaptation early and adjust training? Is that even a real thing, or?
Yeah, it definitely is.
Altitude maladaptation?
Yeah, so I would, if you really want to be nerdy about this, if you're spending time at altitude trying to adapt, I would get hold on, this up. You want to get a pulse oximeter, real cheap.
Ooh,
I'm actually going to look it up to see what the price is, because I don't want to tell people the wrong price in case they've gone up a crazy amount since the last time I bought one. A finger.
Dylan figured out how to use Google.
Yeah. So they're
like
roughly,
I'm sure you've gotten one.
like $50. These pulse oximeters, and you just get the digital, like a digital fingertip pulse oximeter. The way that you see if you're not adapting well is if the reading should be improving as you spend time at altitude. If it's not improving, or if it's even going down, then you're not adapting properly. And that might be an indication that you have some sort of deficiency that's causing you to not adapt well. When we talked about our goal episodes, like a big thing for altitude adaptation, just as an example, is your iron stores. If you have poor iron stores going to altitude already, then your iron will probably drop more and you won't adapt well. That's just one example, but it could be one of many things that could be causing you to not adapt well to altitude. And it is certainly possible to go to altitude for 2, 3, 4 weeks and actually be worse off than when you came there because of, various reasons, like some sort of deficiency like that.
I just thought of something too. Just for safety, if you are somebody who's never been to altitude, you're using the last minute approach, you do the race and you feel okay, I still think that night, get out of there. Like, sleep as low as you can, because if you do have symptoms of altitude sickness, like, they're only going to get worse if you try and sleep there that night. Like,
and
get low.
The after party? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Dude.
More important things. Yeah.
All right, that sounded pretty good. I thought it was a made-up question, so I guess not. All right, race day execution. What should his maximum allowed power be for the start, for Columbine, and for power line? Like, I think what he's hinting at is like, he asked about pacing. So do you allow yourself to go above that pacing strategy at certain parts of the course, like start and on these major climbs?
I think I alluded to this earlier.
Altitude.
But I think that in a properly paced Leadville, you don't go above your FTP once. And when I say FTP, I'm not talking about your sea level FTP. I'm talking about your altitude adjusted FTP. You don't go above that one time if you can help it. You stay at...
You're going to go above it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably going to go above it, but try to avoid doing that at all costs.
Try not to, yeah.
I would try to stick to, zone 3, meaning tempo on the climbs, and high zone 2 on the flats. That's a properly paced Leadville right there.
You can still, correct me if I'm wrong, you can still use your heart rate. Like your heart rate,
yeah.
Like you guys are talking about having to adjust your power based on altitude, but your heart rate auto adjusts. Like your heart rate at threshold at sea level is gonna be the same at your
but
altitude
your heart rate still does.
Is that wrong, or?
I wouldn't say that for certainty.
Yeah, your heart rate still does some weird things at altitude. I'm not gonna lie, like it's not perfect, but I mean you're more or less right. But like a lot,
like if you
something
know
that a lot of people
you can't.
something that a lot of people notice at altitude is that they will bring their heart rate up and then it doesn't recover as quickly. So it doesn't come back down as fast as if they were at sea level. Also, another thing to note is that your max heart rate, this is maybe counterintuitive, but your max heart rate is actually generally lower at altitude than it is at sea level.
Yeah, I would have thought the opposite. You're right.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess what I was getting at was like, if you have like a heart rate ceiling that you know, and you do races, maybe similar to Leadville, and you at sea level, and like, oh man, if my heart rate hits 180, I'm going way too hard. Like, can you apply that same principle to Leadville? Like, if I hit 180, I'm going too hard, so I need to back it off.
Yeah, if you're hitting the same heart rate at sea level at altitude, like, yeah, you're going too hard. But I don't think.
I guess what I'm saying is like if I were to do Leadville, I think the way I would do it is say I would keep an eye on my heart rate, and if my heart rate got too high, I'd say, all right, I need to back it off, and that would be. I think that would be one of the main things that I would look at.
Drew, you're not wrong that your heart rate for a given effort is. So if you're at 70% of your FTP at sea level, and then now you're at 70% of your altitude adjusted FTP, which is going to be lower at altitude, then your heart rate's probably roughly the same. This is what I would just be cautious of, is your max heart rate will actually be a little lower. And if you get really high into your heart rate zones, it will be harder to recover from. So at sea level, let's say you can sustain 5 minutes at 185 beats per minute, and you're like, yeah, I can do 5 minutes at 185, but if I have to do much more, I'm probably cooked, and I shouldn't do much more than 5 minutes at 185 at a sea level gravel race or something. Don't do that at Leadville. Don't spend 5 minutes at 185. If you spend 5 minutes at 185 at Leadville, you will probably be done for the rest of the day. Like, you'll never recover from that. Keep it conservative.
Yeah.
Keep it conservative.
All right. I like it. You guys have anything else to add for this one? He asks about target IF and average power for the entire race. Kind of feel like we've already hit that one.
Kind of already touched on that.
Maybe just, right around, 0.75, 0.8?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily concern yourself too much with the IF, because there's so many factors that, like, the altitude, the distance. I think there's too many factors at play here. I would say more try to stick in that altitude adjusted zone 3, zone 2 for most people.
Yeah.
And if that gives you an IF of 0.75, then that's great. If it's higher, that's great. If it's lower, don't worry about it.
All right, we got a couple questions on fueling and then a couple questions on equipment. So he asks, how many carbs per hour and sodium per hour do I need at altitude? So I think what he's trying to get at is do you adjust your carb intake and your sodium intake based off of altitude?
Yeah. This is the one thing that I don't think needs to be adjusted. Take your sea level fueling strategy and just bring it to Leadville. Doesn't need to be different. However many carbs you can handle for, and again, this is going to be different for everybody. Different people require different numbers of carbs per hour, and different people require different amounts of sodium per hour. And if you haven't tested your sweat, I would recommend doing that for the sodium, and then I would experiment in your own training for the carbs per hour. Like, the way that you're not getting enough in is that you have low energy at the end of the ride. Maybe you're even getting close to bonking. The way that you know that you have too much is that you're getting GI issues. So you kind of want to find a sweet spot somewhere in there. For a lot of people, that's somewhere around 90 grams per hour now with the current fueling technology that we have, where we're getting optimal levels of maltodextrin to fructose. All of that being said, I don't think your fueling strategy needs to change for Leadville. There are people that argue that you go through glycogen quicker when you're at altitude, which is certainly true, but your body can only take in as much fuel as it can take in, and you're already maximizing that at sea level. There's no reason not to just do the exact same thing at altitude. And then what was the second part?
I think it would be really...
Sodium.
Oh, it was just
I was going to say, I think it'll be really hard to execute this plan, but like If you could drink more and take in more electrolytes, that would be optimal, just because there's more hydration loss and electrolyte loss at altitude. Your respiration rate is certainly higher, so you lose more that way as well.
Yeah, I think some people underestimate how, like, they'll see the temperature on race day and it's like a high of 75 or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And they're like, that's not even hot. I do races back home at sea level that are 80 in the 80s and 90s. You know, I think one thing to keep in mind is that when you're at that kind of altitude, the sun is a lot stronger, and when you're riding with no shade at 75 degrees, it actually can feel quite hot. It's not necessarily going to be the hottest race in the world.
You'll sweat
more. It's not going to be like riding at Unbound when it's getting close to 90 degrees, but it can feel hot.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, what's my plan B if I can't eat or drink during the race?
Oh, this one made me laugh. I don't know what your plan B is.
That's great.
You need to reduce your
just gotta
intensity.
slow the heck down, dude.
Yeah, you gotta slow down. Yeah. I mean, usually if you can't eat or drink, it's because you're going so hard that your stomach is not working anymore. Like the harder you go, the less blood your body pumps to things like your digestive system, right? So your digestive system doesn't work as well the harder you're going. And if you're going that hard that you can't eat or drink, you are probably going too hard for this effort. That's going to take 9+ hours. So slow down.
I'd say, like, don't let it get that far, dude. Like,
yeah, don't.
Yeah.
It's not like a
honestly,
light
if
switch.
it has gotten that,
I don't think it's like a light switch.
You screwed up a long time ago. Actually, it's actually too late. I mean, you can get to the finish line, but you screwed up a long time ago if you've gotten to the point where you can't eat and drink.
That's what I would say. Like, if you don't slow down, or if you've gotten to the point where you really can't take in anything, and you keep trying to go hard, it's probably going to end in catastrophe. Like, you probably aren't even going to finish the thing, or you're going to have to just stop or something. Don't let it get that far. Like, when you start to feel your stomach start to churn or whatever, like, I would slow down the intensity then so that you can keep fueling. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Equipment and setup. Last two. Of course, this one. What tires, pressure, and gearing give me the best efficiency for Leadville?
Tires. I've used Conti Race King, which I like. I just think they're a little narrow at 2.2. I would rather have a 2.3 or a 2.4. And I know they have the Dubnatol now, but the Dubnatol is worse than the Race King. And I feel like I can say that at this point. Like, people are flatting them more often. They don't seem to be faster. They seem to actually be a little bit slower. I would not get the Dubnatol. I still run the Race King for gravel races, but when I run the Race King, I run the Race King. I don't run the new Dubnatol, Race Kings are probably going to become harder to find in the future because they're probably phasing them out. So stock up on Race Kings for your gravel races. Although I wouldn't run it for Leadville because I just think it's too narrow. I have gone with Schwalbe the last 2 years, and I've been really happy with that. 2 years ago, when I was really fit for Leadville and I was really confident, I went with Thunderbolts, which is a little bit of a riskier option. It's definitely a more flat-prone option, but it's probably the fastest possible option. It also is a little sketchy on the loose corners, but if you're a confident handler, it's okay for Leadville. And I got that in the 235. I think that's a good size to use. This past year, when I was a little less confident in my ability levels, I ran the Schwalbe Ricks, which have a little bit more knobs, but come in at 2.4 and are testing just slightly slower than the Thunderbirds. I also think that that's a great option. In fact, for most people doing Leadville, I would recommend 2.4 Schwalbe Ricks. That's probably the safest option too in terms of flats. Yeah, actually, Vittoria Peyote is also a great option to go for if you want to go that route. Yeah. And then
in the race
what do you say? Gearing
or like
What's that?
Drew asked about the race casing.
For like if you're doing Vittorias,
Yeah.
yeah, race casing. Flat tires aren't like terribly common at Leadville, but they do happen. So I would go with the racier casing, not the trail casing. As far as gearing goes,
about gear efficiency.
Yeah, so gearing is really going to depend on how fast you're going up the climbs. So somebody like Keegan can get away with a 40 tooth or whatever he ran. That is not going to work for 99% of people because they don't climb as fast as him. Like obviously, the faster you go up the hill, the larger gear you can get away with. I personally go with a 36, and that's for a finish that's somewhere between 6 and 7 hours. I think if you're looking for somewhere between 7 and 8 hours, you might be looking at a 34. If you're looking at the 9 hour range and 9+, you may even have to go lower than that, like a 32.
Yeah, that's all. That's fair.
And that's with that's with like a modern.
Very confident to go with a 34.
Yeah, that's like with a modern cassette that goes like 10 to 50 or 10 to 52.
All right, last question. Full sus or hardtail?
Yeah, I think I think we're talking about a marginal difference between the two, to be honest with you. So obviously, a hardtail is lighter. A full sus is more efficient. You'll probably feel better on the way back. So if you assume that it's a 2 or 3 pound difference between a hardtail and a full sus, so 1 kilo, that I calculated the difference for me at the speed that I ride over the course of Leadville, and it's like 2.5 minutes or something. Only taking into account the weight. So let's say you had a hardtail that was 20 pounds and then another hardtail that was 22 pounds. That would probably be roughly a 2.5 minutes difference between those two bikes. Obviously, you get some benefit from the full suspension. You probably go faster on the descents. You probably save more energy for late in the race. There's some rocky sections where you're saving energy and you can put out more power. And 2.5 minutes is pretty marginal. I would say, a lot of people stress about this. I don't think it's necessarily worth stressing about. I would venture to guess that the difference between these two bikes, when it's all said and done at the end of the race, is a matter of seconds.
Specialized World Cup. That's the bike for this.
Yeah, that's great.
It's the 80 mil, 75 mil.
It's probably what Keegan's going to be running, yeah, if I had to guess. Because they don't make a hardtail anymore, do they? Specialized? I don't even know. That World Cup has replaced their old Epic hardtail.
Could get an Uno.
Don't try and save weight with a rigid post. No, I think you should still have a dropper.
Yeah, so I mean, if we want to talk about dropper versus, straight post, I also calculated the difference here. Like we're talking about, I think 40 or 45 seconds in weight. So if you think that you can make up 40 or 45 seconds on the downhills by having a dropper post, I'd say it's worth it. Which I have run a dropper post every time I've done Leadville because I decided that I could make up 40 to 45 seconds over all the downhills on the course with the dropper post. Some people are so confident in riding with a straight post that they feel they don't need it, and that's great. Again, we're probably talking about a handful of seconds difference.
I think people that haven't done it before are going to be really surprised at how dicey the two-way traffic sections are.
Yeah.
Better to be safe.
And fortunately, we don't need to talk about drop bars because it's against the rules now.
Nice. Good. I didn't want to anyways. All right. I think we'll wrap it there. You guys any last final Leadville comments?
I don't think so.
Yeah. No, seems good.
Dates of our camp to be released soon, but 2nd or 3rd week of July for Crested Butte High Altitude Camp.
Yep. And if you just want some general base fitness, you can sign up for the Tennessee camp with me, March 19th to 23rd, $750. It's a good old time. Lots of climbing to get you ready for Leadville, but not much altitude. All right, cool. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully that answered a ton of this guy's questions for Leadville and a lot of other people's. And good luck to everybody who's racing in Leadville this August.
Yep. Go get out
of
those
you're
books.
Just so excited about this episode. I can hear it in your voice.
And I don't have the power to end this recording, so we're just gonna all have to leave.
All right.
Deuces.